Welcome to the Kent Lapp Podcast.
Yeah, first I just have to say that, and I want to talk about some of the brilliance, and they were brilliant men, but you have to back up and remember that they were deeply, deeply flawed. Most, if not all of them, owned slaves. The African Americans were counted as 3/5 of a person under the Constitution. They deferred the issue of deciding slavery so they could get the Constitution passed. It took a long time until we had to amend the Constitution in the 13th Amendment to say that slavery is not allowed in the United States of America. And so I want to be very clear that for all the things that they may have gotten right, they got a whole lot of things wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe one side or the other will argue, well, they did what they had to do to form a government. They did the best they could. Maybe that's true. Maybe that's not. I'm not going to opine on that. But I don't want to have a whitewashed history of our country for my kids.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to look at the fact that at the same time, a group of white, rich men were sitting in a room in Philadelphia deciding how to form a government. There were, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of black slaves in the South that were living in, an unimaginable reality. And in many ways, that labor paid for the country that we have.
Mm-hmm.
So just want to get that up front before I talk about their brilliance.
Yeah.
And they were very smart as far as, thinking through how to create a political reality that would stand the test of time. It was the first, democratic republic in the history of the world. There had been direct democracies before. If you looked at ancient Greece, everyone directly voted on everything. They didn't want that. They also didn't want a monarchy after they just fought to overthrow one. And there is this real sense, and you actually can tell this when you compare how Americans reacted to coronavirus orders versus how other countries did. I mean, we went kicking and screaming, right? And other countries just complied. And why is that? I think it goes back to our heritage of we are not going to let, and this is what I think the sentiment is we're not going to let some government tell me what to do. Right. And that's, I think, goes back to kind of the sentiment of the Declaration of Independence, which is we have gone to the king again and again and again, really, other than the beginning paragraph of the Declaration of Independence with its, flowery, beautiful language. The rest is like a list of grievances, like you're doing this and we told you not to. You won't let us do that. You install governors that rule over us. We get a trial without a trial without a jury, or, you appoint people to oversee us. You won't let our legislatures meet. You impose taxes without representation. You do all these things. And because of all that, we're forming our own country, King George. So we'll see you later. And so I think there's a little bit of that sentiment that exists in the psyche of America, which I think it's really healthy to question your government. I think it's incumbent upon everyone to question your government. That's why we vote. So what was it about the framers that kind of made it work? I think there's a couple of things I would point to. One is the Bill of Rights, and there was a big debate about that, about whether to include a bill or not. Some folks thought, we don't have to, everybody knows these rights. Of course you have these rights. The other side said, if you don't put them in, who's going to know? And then other people said, well, if you put them in, are people going to think these are the only rights you have? And so there was this big debate. But you think about what those words have come to mean. The document is very short. The Constitution and the Bill of Rights. I mean, it's, a few pages. I mean, it's not this complex, you think about a law library with, the Constitution is about this big.
That's amazing.
Like, for example, that says you have the right to freedom of speech, or the freedom of the freedom of religion clauses, which is the right to express your religion, and that the government can't kind of force a religion on you. The right to bear arms, the right to peacefully assemble, the right to petition your government, all the different things, the right to a trial by jury, the right to be able to, confront the witnesses against you in a criminal trial, no cruel and unusual punishments for crimes. you can't, there's things that say like no bills of attainder or other things like ex post facto laws. Those are basically like you can't, after I've done something, you can't then go pass a law that says it was illegal and arrest me for it, right? Like I have to have fair notice that something's illegal before you arrest me.
Yeah.
No double jeopardy, all those things like that. I mean, it's pretty smart and a lot of foresight to put that in. The other thing that I think was pretty smart, I think it's actually really being tested right now, is the doctrine of what's called separation of powers, which means you have 3 co-equal branches of government that do different things and they pull at each other and it's always kind of fighting and it moves very, very slowly. That was on purpose.
Legislative, executive, judicial.
That's right.
Yep.
And so, just back to Civics 101, right? Legislators make the laws, the executive branch enforces the laws, judiciary decides who broke the laws and decide rights between people.
Was there precedent for that anywhere in the world? Because that does seem fairly smart.
So, a lot of our law comes from what's called the common law of England. So a lot of our court structure and things really follows the English system. But, the whole idea of separating powers like that is really pretty novel. In the UK, for instance, the prime minister really wields a lot of the power, but that's a person elected from the parliament. So it'd be like our House of Representatives and Senate electing the president, right? It's a different model. We have a separate executive that's separated from the legislative branch. So I think that those were some smart things that they did. And I think the whole idea of what's called federalism, which is you have states and you have a federal government, they work together, or they're supposed to complement each other and push and pull on each other. That's pretty novel too.
Yeah.
No other country really has that.
Yeah.
And so I think all those things were smart, and the whole design was to keep one person or entity from having too much power, because they saw power as corrupting.